A tragic crash in Brooklyn left the family devastated, and many are questioning the lenient sentence given to 33-year-old wigmaker. In court, she cried and apologized, but her recorded phone calls paint a very different picture. People are now trying to understand how such a shocking outcome became possible. The New York social media influencer's complete disregard for the safety of anybody around her, blowing through a red light in Brooklyn earlier this year with the accelerator of her luxury car pressed all the way to the floor, her decision to run that light, it set off a deadly domino effect. It killed a mother and two of her children, and it left a community devastated. We're talking about 33-year-old Miriam Yarimi. Now, public records show that she had racked up nearly 100 tickets in just a few years' span, had thousands of dollars in unpaid fines. She was driving her Audi on Ocean Parkway in March when she collided with a rideshare that was trying to turn. The impact caused the Audi to roll multiple times straight into Natasha Saada and her three children who were in the crosswalk. The mother and her daughters, aged 5 and 8, they died from catastrophic injuries. And Natasha's son, who was just 4 years old, he survived but was hospitalized in critical condition. According to ABC7, this boy had skull fractures, a brain bleed. He had to have a kidney removed. The family in the rideshare and its driver, they went to the hospital, only had minor injuries, but this was catastrophic. And Yarimi herself, she was pulled from the car, which had, again, landed upside down. The whole crash, according to New York officials, was caught on surveillance cameras, so you can talk about a strong case here. And according to the Brooklyn DA's office, there was data from that car, from the Audi, that indicated she had the accelerator pressed all the way to the floor and didn't apply the brakes, traveling 68 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour zone. The DA's office also says that Yarimi was using her cell phone and taking a selfie when she ran that light. Now, Yarimi was this self-proclaimed wig influencer on social media. She often posted content showcasing wigs that she made for clients or herself. And the Audi that she was driving that day had a custom license plate that read wigmaker. So if you're talking about how do you properly ID somebody, there you go. When she was cut out of that car, Yarimi, who had just minor injuries, allegedly told first responders that agents from the CIA were out to get her, and also stated that she, quote, had the devil in her. This is according to reports. So she was taken to Bellevue Hospital for an evaluation, and since then she's been incarcerated. But in October, Yarimi entered a guilty plea to 3 counts of second-degree manslaughter after initially facing 20 charges, including criminally negligent homicide. And when it came to sentencing, what her punishment would be after taking 3 lives, the prosecution, the judge, they were at odds. They were at odds over how long she should spend in prison. This may shock you. To talk about this, to talk about Yarimi's punishment and the shocking new details revealed in the prosecution's sentencing memorandum, I want to welcome back on trial attorney Aaliyah Roberts to the studio. Aaliyah, thanks so much for coming on. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
You know, this is a crash that really is, I don't care where you are in the country, it is shocking, to say the least. It's so upsetting. It rocked this area, though, especially the Jewish community, which Natasha and her family belong to, and it really put a spotlight on reckless driving, the consequences. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you drive and you see people on their phone. Mm-hmm. You see people just doing things like this. But the part about this, that it's not just what she did, it's the build-up to it as well. That's what I think makes it so egregious. What were your initial thoughts, before we even get into sentencing, what were your initial thoughts about how egregious this case was?
I definitely agree, Jesse. I think the accelerator being all the way to the floor and no indication that the brakes were ever used is very concerning. And arguably, depending on how long that she was driving, I wouldn't have done second degree. I would have tried to argue there was some sort of premeditation there. You're thinking about the fact that your foot is on the gas, right? You're driving, you know for a fact that that's a reckless indifference to another life. You're operating a vehicle that can cause an accident. So the fact that you're speeding, you're doing 68 and 25.
They would have to establish she intended to kill them, right?
Yeah. But then we could also argue to premeditate a reckless indifference for a human life, right? So on a different level of, obviously we have a premeditation element, but there's also a reckless indifference element that we could, right? We're talking about what the prosecution could have done. In this instance, they didn't. But I think the problem is, selfie aside, right? Of course, people use their phones. We know no one should do it. We know you shouldn't operate your phone while using a vehicle. But on top of her using the gas and accelerating the gas, being aware of where you are. It wasn't like she was, on a highway doing this. Not that that would make it any better. You're in a zone where there are pedestrians that are walking. You're in a neighborhood or residential area. The speed limit is 25. You're driving 40 miles over the speed limit plus. It's ridiculous.
Are you not surprised that she pled guilty? Because if you look at the data from the car, the surveillance, this crime scene, it tells so much of the story. I don't know what her defense would have been at trial. It seems like pleading guilty was her best option.
It seems that she was trying to set up an insanity defense, right? By saying the devil is inside of me, by trying to get a mental health evaluation. I'm sure if it did go to trial, the defense would have had some sort of mental health expert that said that she was diagnosed with some sort of disorder that relayed with her, that was a result of her being in this accident. It was the disorder that caused her to not be aware that, she was speeding or that she was aware of the risk to other human lives. I'm sure that's where they were going, but fortunately, we didn't have to go to trial on this.
I guess the question is, there is a point to what the justice said here, that if someone pleads guilty, they're pleading guilty for a reason. For obviously, you don't take this to trial, a jury is not exposed to it, saves time and expense, you're admitting guilt. There should be something that potentially, not in every case, but maybe in cases where there's a range of punishment, something that should be offered to the defendant. But why not do 5 to 10? Those years are significant, and the concern I think people have is, what message does this send?
For sure, I definitely agree, and I think my thing about this case was she was a self-proclaimed influencer, right? We're living in a time in which influencers and content creators are deemed celebrities, and they have that sort of celebrity protection. So I was thinking, well, was she big enough to have some sort of defense of, like, she's this self-proclaimed influencer? Are we letting influencers get away with certain things that we wouldn't let the normal person do that? Because, Jesse, I can promise you right now, if I was the defendant in this case, I would not be serving, and I'm an attorney, right? I would not be serving 3 to 7 years, right? Like you said, if she serves 3 or 3 to 9, if she serves 1 year per life, if she gets the least amount of sentencing. I'm not saying that she would, but the fact that she could get 3 years, that means, like you said, it's 1 year per life.
I want to play you something. So Yarimi herself appeared remorseful, sobbing as she read a statement. Take a listen.
There's a lot of sorrow and pain, remorse, regret I feel in my heart. Causing such an unspeakable tragedy. Accept full responsibility. I think about the victims every day. It's not a day that goes by where I don't think about what I've done.
In its sentencing memorandum filed ahead of the hearing, District Attorney Eric Gonzalez blasted Yarimi for her actions and laid out the ways that she's shown she's actually not sorry for what she did, because the DA wrote that Yarimi drove in a, quote, impressively reckless and selfish manner. Quote, the defendant sped. She used her cell phone while driving. She blew through multiple red lights. Unsurprisingly, the defendant, concerned only with her own safety, wore her own seatbelt. Unfortunately, she remained disinterested in who else she put at risk. Her actions affected the lives of so many that day. 3 separate families, 9 separate victims. They never stood a chance against the defendant's 68-mile-per-hour, 2-ton weapon. We never think about that, but it really is a weapon. A car is a weapon. And the DA continued, as the defendant's car was careening across Ocean Parkway, the Saada family was crossing the street. They were coming from synagogue on Shabbat. They had the walk sign. They were in the crosswalk. They were holding hands. They did everything right that day except having the catastrophic misfortune of being in the way of Miriam Yarimi. And I think that highlights the lack of defense. You couldn't put the blame on the family here. The judge put that into account, didn't put it into account, because that's, again, that's pretty strong words.
I definitely agree, and I still don't quite understand the rationale. I guess if you're thinking maybe like this was her first time offense, arguably, because speeding tickets and citations aren't considered offenses, right? Like she's never, if she has no criminal background or criminal history, maybe we're taking that into account. But I feel that the judge did not consider the severity of the crime. There are lives that were lost, and not just one life, multiple lives were lost. And as the DA said, multiple families were affected, right? And unfortunately, granted, the family that were in the Uber, the passengers that were in the Uber or the Lyft, the vehicle that the defendant actually came into contact with, even though they didn't die, thank God, they're still with us, but they also sustained injuries.
Yeah,
so it wasn't the fact that you've killed these people, you've injured these other people, and as you said, Jesse, a car is a weapon. I think as people every day we don't consider that, but as we see right now, like this loss caused the loss of multiple lives.
I'm just trying to make sense of this because the more I read it, the more frustrated I get. I mean, the sentencing memorandum also talks about Yarimi's finances. Let's talk about that. So she portrayed herself on social media as having access to serious money, showed off luxury goods, designer items, all on Instagram and TikTok. The prosecution says that she had access to multiple homes, lied about her official address when questioned at the hospital, and on those jail calls, she allegedly talked about wanting to hide her money. Quote, in recorded phone calls between October 22nd, 2025 and October 26th, 2025, that's like a minute ago, the defendant references her civil suit and her finances and her intent to move her money to South America. The defendant has even attempted to deflect her civil liabilities by countersuing the Uber that she struck. Now, an attorney for the Saada family has indicated that the family is considering filing a wrongful death lawsuit. This is according to the New York Post. That's not surprising, right?
No, not at all. And I think that, unfortunately, because she has not actually been, even though she's been deemed guilty, civilly, they still have to prove their case. So her moving her money before the civil lawsuit comes into effect or it's actually sued, it's not a crime. It's horrible because we know why she's doing it, but it's not a crime in and of itself. There's nothing that's prohibiting her from moving her money. But I want to go back to something that you said earlier, that it doesn't make sense. One of my really, really great friends says that sometimes you can't make it make sense because it doesn't. There's no situation in which an individual who causes the death of three lives, of three people, should ever get 3 years in prison. And we know that that's the least amount, right? But even the fact that that's even a possibility in this case is enraging for the families, for the people, for everyday individuals who want people who drive recklessly on the road to be held accountable.
What does the family do? What do families of these absolute tragedies do? How do they move forward?
Well, unfortunately, the legal answer is to sue civilly, right? Yeah. That's the short end of the stick. But from a personal, as an empath of myself, like, go to counseling, go to grief therapy, right? Hug your loved ones a little bit tighter, and really, really just look to whatever you can find, those happy moments, those wonderful moments that you had with your family before they were no longer with you. I think it's really, really, it's a horrible message that we are sending in our courts, considering that there's certain people, essentially you're telling people if you have access to money and you have access to certain defenses that, you might get off the slap on the wrist. And again, we know that I don't think that this woman's going to get 3 years. I really don't think that. More? I think she's definitely going to get more. But the fact that that's even a possibility is scary. It's scary because we've all been pedestrians. At some point, we're in the tri-state area, right? I've gone walking on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn before. I've been in that area before, just walking around, going to a friend's house or doing whatever. Do I have to fear that I'm going to get hit by a reckless content creator, taking a selfie at the red light or speeding through red lights? It's scary. It's very scary.
It's very scary. It seems like this family has a ton of support, particularly from the community, and just thoughts, prayers, and well wishes to them as they try to navigate this. Aaliyah Roberts,
sure.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Great
Appreciate
seeing you, Jesse.
it.
Always a pleasure.